Welcome to another Subconscious video. Today's episode is going to be a very special episode because it celebrates the 12-year anniversary of my comic series, Dreamscape. On February 7th, 2007, I created the story. Some of my characters have made cameo appearances in my past Subconscious Saturday episodes, such as Libra, Damien, and the Dahlgren. The story initially got inspired by my fascination with dreams, and that if you do remember your dreams every night, you're essentially going through an adventure or a story, and I wanted to kind of illustrate that into a comic series or a manga series. Now, before I started Dreamscape, I did make a series of short stories when I was a kid, often inspired by things that I either really liked, or movies, books, TV shows. This transcended into another idea, which initially got inspired by the idea that I've been journaling my dreams ever since 1999. Now, the earliest dream that I do remember, however, is from 1995, but in 99, that's when I really started to write things down. I started to write down my more fascinating dreams, and what I would do when I got a little bit older in 2001, 2002, I started actually turning into these documented dreams into comic strips. The comic strips eventually turned into another idea that I came up with my friend Siler, whom also remembered a lot of his dreams every night, and we decided to turn the series into something called Shadow Dreams. Now, Shadow Dreams' name comes from the term Shadow Dragons from Dragon Ball GT, and him and I often had a lot of dreams about Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball, and GT, just because we were just so heavily invested in the series at the time. We would make comics, we would read and write fan fictions, we would do fan art, and after just getting so into the universe of Dragon Ball, it inspired us to make our own story based off of the series, and that goes towards the very first Dreamscape characters, which were Libra and Taurus. So those two characters came from a Dragon Ball fanfiction that I came up with at the time, along with another character that I came up with known as the Dragonfly. The Dragonfly was inspired by how I met Siler, which was from seeing a swarm of dragonflies near the swamp area at a summer camp that we met each other at. Funny story with the Dragonfly. With its aesthetics, it actually also got inspired by another friend of mine who goes by Rob, also known as Zero, and he's making a trading card game known as Terrazone Clash of Creatures. And what comes around goes around, as they say, because where it got inspired by his art style, it's also going to be making a cameo appearance later on in his card game, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be real exciting stuff. And I also edit his Terror Talk vlogs, so feel free to check that out. I'm going to leave a link down in the description so you can see. One last thing about the Dragonfly is its head is also the logo that we see in the lower left-hand corner of all of my videos. So you could say that it branched off into many very fascinating ideas. And going back to the story for a moment, with the Dragonfly, Taurus, and Libra, after I made a very short fan fiction for Dragon Ball that further inspired more and more ideas, and at the time I was also getting heavily influenced by Naruto, and I created another original character that was a kitsune, or in this case a four-tailed fox that was inspired by Naruto's nine-tailed fox, and I then created another story that I called The Spirit, and that one really didn't make it to a full comic strip. It was really just writing, and after I wrote down the idea for The Spirit, that's then when I was making more and more original characters, one of which I called the Mystical Cat Girl. And she was heavily influenced by another character known as Inuyasha, and she was also influenced by my cat, as well as Sailor Moon's cat, Luna, and she was the next character that ended up going into the Dreamscape universe. Some other series that further influenced my original run of Dreamscape were Dean Angel as well as Wolf's Rain. And with music, I was heavily influenced by Nirvana, 30 Seconds to Mars, Pink Floyd, and at the time you could say alternative rock was really at its peak around the mid-2000s era of 2004, 2005, and I actually created a playlist of various scenes as well as music that helped to really inspire Dreamscape both back then as well as the revamp that we're going to be seeing. So feel free to check out the playlist links down in the description as well. After creating the mystical cat girl, that's then when I went on to create the first real draft of Dreamscape, which was called Believe It or Not at the time. And Believe It or Not had the next rendition of Libra, where she was wearing kind of a magician's outfit, and she had these magical gloves and a little companion that was a ghost. He had these souls in a jar that were trapped in these marbles, and he had like these special powers that went alongside with Libra in the story. And it kept that name, Believe It or Not, for a good 2 years before I eventually changed the name to Dreamscape in 2006. And Libra's design changed quite a bit over the years. I was playing around with the idea as if she was a dragon or a dog, and those ideas then branched off into other characters, such as Damien and Cheyenne, which then ended up being their own characters. The little ghost then evolved into another character known as Kurt, who ended up being a fortune teller / hunter character in my story. And Kurt was basically like an oracle, and he also kind of had his own agenda. When I created the first chapter of this rendition of Dreamscape, I was going for a more comical approach, so there was a lot of slapstick humor that showed up in this story. So that was kind of influenced by Dragon Ball, as well as various other comical skits that I've seen in your typical anime slapstick humor. And at the time I was just writing the story, I was just having fun with it, and I didn't really plan out the initial plot of it. I just knew that I wanted to create something that was influenced by dreams, and I had a basic idea of what all the characters were, as well as subplots that were going on. And the original run was only going to be 24 chapters long. After I wrote the 10th chapter, that's then when I decided that I needed to come back to this story and add more mature ideas to dreams, as there's so much psychology that goes into dreams. Aside from the fantasy aspects, there's a lot of reasons as to why we see what we see, as to why we dream what we dream, and that's where my subconscious Saturday idea kind of got influenced from. So you could say that in some ways Dreamscape also influenced the subconscious Saturday series, and of course the story itself is going to take off. I've just been working on it for quite some time, as I really want to showcase the psychology of this story as well as the comical side. As they say, life, it ebbs and flows. There's going to be a bright side to life, but there's also going to be the scarier moments, the depressing moments, and then it goes back into the comical moments. And a lot of the successful movies and a lot of the successful shows that are out there, they will have comic relief, they will have more serious moments, and that's where later on I got more influenced by the writing style of Fullmetal Alchemist as well as Black Butler. During the time that I was making Dreamscape, I was also making a lot of animated shorts. My first one being an animated music video that was influenced by Pink Floyd, and then shortly after that I made another one that was about caramel dancing, so that was very popular at the time, so of course I had to make my characters go through that dance. I then animated the full episode of Chapter 1, so that ended up being a 13-minute episode. So I think that pretty much wraps up everything that I wanted to say about Dreamscape for now. If you have any questions about the old story, feel free to comment down below. They can be found on some of my social media platforms such as DeviantArt. You can find the first 2 chapters online. If you're ever curious about how some of the other chapters unfolded, I just might upload the rest of the story at some point if there's enough interest. So everyone, I'll catch you later, and once again, sleep well everyone.